Ubisoft. A name that many people know about. A name that has been in the news just a bit. A name that is slowly becoming the downfall of many, many other companies that used to exist. Video game companies I'm talking about. Video game companies that used to exist in the 2000s era that were seen as very, very good indeed, and now are about to crumble about 20 years later. Before I get into things, I'm going to quickly just announce that Dan once again has changed plans in terms of what he's going to do on this channel. And hopefully, in the next couple of days and weeks and so, you'll kind of see where I'm heading with this. This isn't just a one-off. I'm going to rant about Ubisoft, my favorite company in the entire world. I've only ever said really good things about Ubisoft in the past. Ubisoft games are shit. They've always been shit. But this is more of a case of, I'm going to try something out. I'm going to try something out, and I have an idea for what I want to do, and yet again has another idea what he wants to do on the channel. But I'm going to try something out. You're going to see more of these videos. Not necessarily about me ranting about Ubisoft. You might be glad to know. I don't know. But more or less talking about what's happening in the video game landscape. It's a busy world. There's a lot to talk about. It seems like it goes to shit every single day. So why not report the news and talk about it and see if we can kind of dissect what the fuck is going on. But today's video, we are talking about Ubisoft, of course. Now, Ubisoft, in recent news, there's been many fucking things that have happened, but Ubisoft stock market price of the entire company has crashed, employees are getting laid off or they're striking. And today's video is kind of a combination of all of those things put together. Because essentially, what we have now in terms of what Ubisoft, I don't know, hopes and dreams for the future going forward with anything, it does seem like everything relies on one game franchise, the game franchise that kind of skyrocketed them into popularity back in the 2000s. And that's Assassin's Creed Shadows. Now, Assassin's Creed Shadows was originally meant to come out at the end of this year. That has been delayed now to the start of 2025. I will come back to that towards the end of the video because some people see that as kind of another negative to add on top of the negativity of Ubisoft. And maybe it is, but you'll see my point when I get to the end of the video. So there's like tons and tons and tons of dog shit again that many people have already kind of reported on. But I kind of want to start with this story, and it's in regards to Baldur's Gate 3 publishing chief who's called out Ubisoft over their broken strategy. If gamers need to get used to not owning games, developers must get used to not having jobs. Pretty strong statement. Michael Deuce, or Deuce, is it Deuce? Deuce? I'm sorry if I'm calling you a Deuce now, but like I don't know. I don't know to speak English. Like if you know me, like I am English, but I don't really know how to speak English. Michael here is the chief publishing officer for Larian Studios, who made the game of last year, Baldur's Gate 3. Now, Baldur's Gate 3 did very, very well. They seem to have things quite nicely put when it comes to development time, development cost, how their actual employees were feeling about, you know, making the game itself. Basically, they did a lot of good things, and kind of everyone saw that, and then that kind of helped, I think. Not only was, I'm not just trying to say like Baldur's Gate won Game of the Year because, hey, they did things that were different from all these kind of bigger AAA companies. And Baldur's Gate and Larian Studios are not seen as a AAA company, but they kind of treated Baldur's Gate 3 like it was a AAA company, but still wanted to make sure that everything around it was treated well and is a proper way to actually make games. So they're a little bit on their high horse. I get it. Some people may see it like that, you know, look, we got one Game of the Year and blah, blah, blah. We can call out Ubisoft now. Now, the game that kind of has sparked a lot of this debate, or kind of why it was brought up by Michael, was the recent Prince of Persia game, the Prince of Persia: The Lost Crown, which was kind of like a... didn't expect any kind of Prince of Persia game before. It was kind of a, like, no one was really expecting it, and then it kind of came out and it was sort of like, here's like a rebooted version of Prince of Persia that kind of goes back to its kind of like classic side-scrolling kind of days, and it it was just sort of like a nice surprise when it was announced. It just, no one was really expecting it, especially coming from Ubisoft. No one was really expecting this type of game to come out. And it did look like a one of those games where it's like it should be kind of like one of those AA or indie title games, but it's obviously being funded by Ubisoft, so they're going to have a hefty budget behind it. Prince of Persia: The Lost Crown was quite good. PC Gamer's Molly Taylor felt it was dragged down by a very slow start, calling it a slow burn to a fault in an overall positive review. This is a sentiment that has resonated with a lot of people. It has positive reviews on Steam. It has positive reviews on OpenCritic. It has positive reviews on Metacritic, even if you use that. It was a very positive game when it came out. Despite that, Ubisoft recently confirmed that the development team has been scattered to the four winds to work on other projects that will benefit from their expertise. Douse, I'm going to call him Douse. Michael Douse feels that at least partially the outcome of Ubisoft's focus on subscriptions over controversial game sales, the whole feeling comfortable with not owning your game thing, espoused from Ubisoft director of subscriptions Philip Tremblay earlier this year, and the decision to stop releasing games on Steam, which is far and away the biggest digital storefront in PC gaming. Basically, Michael's point being that this team ends up making a really, really good game. They get scattered to work on other projects because of that. But there's also the thing about that Ubisoft don't release their games on Steam. Now, I know if you go on Steam, and I just said about earlier, that the actual game is on Steam. Like, you can see it on Steam, you can buy it on Steam, it is available there. However, it wasn't there on launch initially. And it's that initial kind of hype and that initial, when you log on to a Steam homepage and you see what's, the kind of first thing most people would do if they're on the storefront is scroll down to new and trending. It's that kind of like initial hype. It's the first week of sales. That's usually the most important, and it's the most amount of sales that you normally would get. It kind of leads you to have like even more exposure. You've already got the people that are going to buy it on day one, but you also have the people that weren't necessarily going to buy it on day one, but they see it on the storefront. They see that it's top of the new and trending, and that then increases people's, kind of the viewership over it. Therefore boosting the sales, because people can see that initially it was really good reviews and people would have seen that and they would have gone, maybe I'll take a chance on this game. Wasn't planning on buying it, but maybe I will. Especially for a game that's a reboot of a game that hasn't come out in so very long. You would have just thought they would have want like a little bit more exposure to the fact that it's coming. I completely forgot. I mean, it's just me, but like I completely forgot that it came out until like about a couple of days later. And I was like, oh yeah, it's out. But it wasn't initially on the Steam front. It was only available through Ubisoft's Avenue. Let's Uplay, whatever the fuck, the launcher, the Ubisoft launcher. It was only available through Ubisoft, essentially. I mean, that doesn't really mean much for PlayStation and console and all that kind of stuff. But like, PC market is quite big and huge. And I think it's like, it should still be a big deal even nowadays. I think a lot of people are kind of sick of having consoles and the way things have worked out for consoles, especially having only kind of one storefront if you have a digital copy or a digital console nowadays. And it's kind of tricky, or it's somewhat not as known or not as common to get like a physical edition of a game. Most of the time you're going to be buying through a storefront. PC gaming is very much 100% digital storefront. Like, it is not anything to do with physical at all. And so the biggest platform that has that for PC gamers is Steam. And you would think about getting exposure for that would kind of be a big deal, especially for a game that hasn't come out. Like, it's a rebooted series that hasn't come out for quite some time. And you want to make a good first impression with this reboot. You want to have a lot of eyes on it. The last notable game on the platform was Far Cry 6 in 2021. Douse posted on X via Games Radar. The Crew Mirage Avatar came in 2023 and didn't perform, so you can assume subscriptions were at a lull when Pop released by 2024, Prince of Persia, which means people wouldn't be launching their store all too much. And again, he's saying because people weren't launching the Uplay store or the Ubisoft store to get these games, because in 2023 they had all those other games, they didn't really perform well. They did the same thing with Prince of Persia. It doesn't perform well. you can see a trend going here. And then again, after it not successfully doing very well, 7 months or 8 months later, it comes out on Steam and it sells a bit, but obviously it's a bit too late because the kind of that initial first week hype or that pre-release kind of hype is kind of gone. Now, when a game fails to kind of produce, and especially when it's tied to Ubisoft or a big publishing company, the kind of inevitable happens, which has happened so many times this year, is that the studio that made Prince of Persia shuts down or gets shut down by Ubisoft. Now, people are also angry about this because, and this happens with a lot of different things. You look at Hi-Fi Rush is a prime example with Microsoft shutting down their studio. That game performed really, really well. People loved that game. It got great reviews, and then it doesn't sell. It doesn't hit the expectations in terms of sales that the publishing company or the company in charge or the money expected, and then that studio gets shut down despite themselves making a good game. Same thing happens here with Prince of Persia. There's around about 90 to 100 people that were making the Prince of Persia game, but the thing about it is this is where a lot of these studios come in, and I could talk about this for 20 million videos, and you probably, since these are a new format, you're probably expecting me to make a bunch more of these videos in the future where I talk about, like, this is infuriating, like, this is so fucking obvious what you need to do kind of thing. It's another one of those things where I'm like, okay, I get it. We're not, as in everyone else who's playing the games, we're not in the video games industry, as in we're in there, like, in the grind of making the actual video game. But economically wise and projection wise, I think we can understand, like, what's realistic and what's not, and what's kind of like you're overdoing it here, and you're also expecting much to come here, especially from what this game is, aka a game that is a reboot of a game that hasn't come out in ages and people have kind of forgotten about, and it's a new generation of people playing video games, so they might not know what it is, and you're also kind of impacting the hype of it by not releasing it on a fucking Steam platform where everyone can see it. On top of all that, the reported budget to make this game was $200 million. To give you some idea of how fucking crazy that is, The Last of Us Part 2 was an estimated $200 million to make. And that was Naughty Dog. And they were making The Last of Us Part 2. Let me remind you, The Last of Us Part 2. It was a game that was a sequel to a game that came out kind of recently, in a way. It took a couple of years to make, I get it. But still, people had it in their minds. And it got released. And it was made for $200 million. And it sold, and it made enough money on its first week of sales to kind of make back the amount of money that they have spent on making that game in the first week of sales. Prince of Persia game returned $15 million. And it makes it even more strange that even the developers reportedly did not expect the game to turn a profit, as it was a passion project for a dormant series. Do you see where even the people who are making the game don't expect any kind of, like, even the people making this game are sort of just sat there going like, well, we've been given this budget and we might as well use it because we want to use, like, we want to make the best game possible. But, like, don't expect, like, a lot of people to be buying this, especially because I bet you they didn't even know that maybe that the actual game would be released on Steam on day one. Like, it's so odd how $200 million, and I get it, games are expensive to make, but this kind of game, you know, it's a 2D/3D side scroller. I get it, games are still expensive to make, but $200 million to make this game, especially when the devs themselves are saying that they don't expect it, like, to make any money. But they're still going to make it because they love, like, the actual series themselves, and good on them, is just screams to me about a company that clearly the people who are in charge have no fucking idea what they are doing, and clearly the people who are actually have the talent, who are actually making the video games, do. They should be put in charge. They would go you know what? This is probably not going to make enough money. We might as well scale the budget down because we don't want to kind of go over budget on it. Maybe Ubisoft saw this as a new IP, kind of like a rebooted IP that they could put a lot of money into, and then it becomes like this franchise that they can continue to make, and it makes a lot of money and stuff, and they have to put a lot of money behind it to make a good impression. But you are doing that with so many fucking games. To quote one of their villains in one of their most actually really, really good entry into the series, Far Cry 3, Vaas, I think it's Vaas, Michael Mando plays him. To quote him from one of their games, the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over again, expecting different results. Ubisoft are, ironically, now the definition of insanity. This has now also led to 700 workers walking out of Ubisoft, and this was in regards to them telling them to come back into the office for at least 3 days a week in the office when previously they could just work from home. So the staff are kind of going like, that's not really part of the problem, and it's not really part of the... You know what? It's not really part of the problem, and I'm all for working at home. Like I know some people are completely against it and all this kind of stuff, but I'm really all for working at home, especially in an office job. You can get all your work done at home. You can save money by not having the fucking lights on, by having all your employees using up all electricity and power and stuff. Like, your employees will feel better. You will save money in terms of running costs on top of all that. And it just makes things a lot easier, and people can work even longer because they're working at home. If you want them to work longer, they probably will be more than okay with that than going into the office. And it just seems like Ubisoft think, well, okay, so we're losing money, we're over budgeting, game sales from our expectations are not hitting their marks, we're closing down studios, and then we're taking people who did really, really good at video game to go work on other projects rather than kind of like look at what worked on our previous one and see how we can make another one but do it better and learn from our mistakes. They then just say to people, you have to come into work for 3 days now. That's the thing. Because that will improve morale. Because that will change everything. I think really, honestly, part of the main problem here is the plan. And who's in charge of the plan? It's the people in charge of the company. The plan isn't working, guys. Your employees are struggling. They are walking out on you. This is not going well. You need to change, firstly, their kind of work environment and how they feel about it. Because if you lose them, then the whole fucking thing goes to shit. Like, you may be getting games now that actually are received very well and are doing like all right reviews, not outstanding. I mean, Star Wars Outlaws wasn't outstanding reviews, but it was decent, you know, like it wasn't a fucking game changer, but it was decent. You know, if you start losing the employees, you're just going to get games that employees don't care about because they don't care about the company they work for, and then you lose those possibly like really good quality games. Possibly, I'm just saying, possibly. I know they'll still work their hardest, but you lose the morale and you lose the kind of trust from your own employees. Then you're fucked. Then it's done. Then it's over. You have a lot of employees, and 700 of them have already walked out because you changed the timetable for when they have to come into work. Imagine what happens when you do something else they don't like. And so we go back to the one Ubisoft hope, the one thing we've been waiting on. They've been teasing. They've been saying, this is the one. This is the golden child. It has returned. This thing is going to send us back to the early 2000s or the mid 2000s when we were on top of our game. That is Assassin's Creed Shadows. Just because of what's happened over the past year, at the very least, everything seems to be riding on Assassin's Creed Shadows to do well in terms of sales figures, in terms of reviews, in terms of a profit. Those are the three main things. And the game got delayed. Now, it was meant to come out at the end of this year, which is kind of important when you realize that it's it's the holiday season. When you release a game in the holiday season, you want to make the big bucks. Like the people specifically target October, November for a lot of games, especially big publishers, because they want them to be released during Christmas and get all the sales from the Christmas sales and etc. etc. They've now delayed this to after or early 2025, which a lot of people have said, that's it, it's over. And this was what spawned a bunch of fucking videos on YouTube saying that this is the end of Ubisoft. And it may well be, because they've missed a big target in terms of sales to get this out before Christmas. But I, weirdly, as a person who has not praised Ubisoft in the greatest light in the past many years,
they've always been shit.
I see this as a good thing. I'll tell you what. It's very simple. Would you, considering what we know already, how hard do you think it was for the Ubisoft execs and the heads of Ubisoft to not release this game before Christmas? Because money. How hard do you think it was for them to go, all right, we're going to have to delay this thing? I think this shows that they're listening, or at least they're reacting to the hate and everything that's happened and all the comments and everything that's happened to them. They're at least reacting and changing something around, or at least giving more time to developers to make the best possible game. There's clearly a reason why they delayed it. If they would have released it and it still needed a delay and it was a bad launch, it would have been a fucking total disaster. Game over. That's it. Ubisoft is... I don't see how they recover from this. The fact that they're delaying it gives some hope that they've actually listened and they're actually going to say, you know what? Forget about the Christmas rush. Let's just make sure that this is the game that we all hope it to be. And I do hope that Ubisoft do really well with this game. I really do. Because I don't want to see franchises and IPs and developers, especially people lose jobs and things like that. It's not nice. It's not nice at all. I just hope they've learned from this is a sign that they've learned from their past mistakes. This is the start, at least, that they've learned from past mistakes and things that they've got wrong. This could be a fresh start for Ubisoft. This whole Assassin's Creed release and it being delayed and all this kind of stuff. This could be the start of like a new era for Ubisoft where they start climbing back out of the dog shit that they're currently in. Or they could delay it and then it's also has a really rocky launch and it also doesn't sell well and people also don't like it. And then they end up firing the entire team that's worked on it. And then we're back at square one. And then where is there to go from here? I don't even want to talk about Beyond Good and Evil 2 because that's just like, what is there to look forward to? This is your prime franchise series now, you know? This is it. This is it used to be Far Cry, now it's Assassin's Creed. It's Assassin's Creed is the one. It's the one that can save you. Do I feel confident that they're going to be saved by it or it's going to go well? We'll see. I have hope. I have a little bit of hope because of this delay. I think it's a good thing rather than a bad thing. I know a lot of people see delays as a bad thing. It's mainly a bad thing for people because they're expecting it to come out at a certain time. People wanted to play it, and now they feel like, oh, for fuck's sake, there's something clearly wrong with the game. Delays should be seen as a good thing. It means you overcompensated or you kind of overestimated where you're meant to be with the game, and you've realized you're not there yet. So let's take some time to figure this out and make the best game possible when it comes out. That's what I hope. That's what I hope Ubisoft was thinking. They could just be fucking going, well, panic. We don't know what to do. And the entire project is already in a mess, and no matter what delay happens, it's going to be a mess. But we shall see.